Hey, Joanne from ArtResin here. So one of the most important factors when working successfully with epoxy resin is temperature. Colder temperatures can give resin a thick consistency, whereas warmer temperatures give it a perfect viscosity and a clarity that really is a joy to work with. Now, although resin prefers warm temperatures over cold, more heat isn't necessarily better, so there are a few things to be aware of when resining in summer. If the ambient heat and humidity are too high, you may end up with curing issues, and prolonged heat exposure can even affect cured resin. To achieve optimal results, it's best to work with resin in a dry environment, just above standard room temperature throughout the curing process. So what does this mean for working with ArtResin in the heat of summer? Today we're going to have a look at the effect that high temperatures and humidity can have and give you some tips to help you beat the heat and ensure a successful summertime resin. When the resin and hardener are combined, the curing process begins and starts to generate heat. In fact, you may notice that your resin gets warm in the cup after it's mixed. The higher the heat, the faster the resin will cure. A warm environment can work to your advantage and help your piece dry a little faster, but too high in ambient heat can actually jumpstart the curing process, causing the resin in your mixing cup to get hot very quickly and thicken prematurely. When working with resin in summer, we suggest using air conditioning to help maintain standard room temperature or just slightly above. Ideally, it should be no cooler than 72 Fahrenheit or 22 Celsius and no higher than 85 Fahrenheit or 30 Celsius. Now, if air conditioning isn't an option and the temperature is above 85 Fahrenheit or 30 Celsius, try resining in the coolest part of your house or in the cooler morning hours. Just as the temperature of your resin room can affect cure time, so too can the temperature of the ArtResin itself. Warm is good, but resin and hardener that are too hot can cure prematurely or even instantly after being mixed. To prevent this from happening, preparation is key when resining in the summer months. Make sure you allow time for your resin to come to room temperature if it's too hot. For example, if it's come straight out of a hot car or it was delivered and left out in the sun. Make sure your tools are on hand and organized and that your project has been prepped. You should be ready to pour immediately after you mix the resin and hardener so that your resin isn't sitting in the cup. Finally, keep in mind that if you're applying resin to a surface that can retain heat, like metal, a hot substrate can also accelerate curing and diminish your working time. Summer often brings high humidity along with the heat. Humidity refers to the amount of moisture in the air, and this can make a difference in your resin's final result. If moisture is introduced into the mix, you may end up with a cloudy look or an oily appearance on the surface layer. This loss of clarity can occur during mixing and pouring or while the piece is curing, so it's important to maintain a consistent humidity level throughout the curing process. Suggested humidity is below 80% and ideally below 50% for optimal results. Air conditioning can cut humidity, but running a dehumidifier the day before you plan to resin is a good idea if you live in a very humid climate. Cured resin can withstand a certain amount of heat, say a warm coffee cup on a coaster, for example, but high temperatures can cause even fully cured resin to temporarily soften. The resin will quickly harden up again once it cools down, but prolonged exposure can cause the resin to shift or distort. For example, a coaster left in a sunny window may become flexible, but will harden up again once the temperature drops. In the case of resined artwork, this flexibility can make the resin vulnerable to denting and damage. Care must be taken not to stack up or lean artwork against each other if, for example, you're showing your work at an outdoor art festival. Never leave cured resin art, including tumblers, inside of a hot car during the summer months. In these conditions, the temperature can get exceedingly hot. Gravity may pull the softened resin, causing it to pool or warp irreparably. So remember, for flawless results during the summer months, always use ArtResin as directed, and remember these rules of thumb. Keep your workspace, resin, and tools ideally between 75 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit or 24 to 30 degrees Celsius and stable for the first 24 hours. Ideal humidity is below 50%, however, you can work in conditions less than 80% humidity. Cured resin art should not be exposed to high temperatures for any length of time. And if you're working with resin in winter, check out our video, How Does Cold Weather Affect Resin?, which has lots of great advice for using ArtResin in winter. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.